Little late night Louie action for the team. I thank you guys for joining me on this Monday night. Aaron Donald gets broken off. Meanwhile, the numbers still continuing to climb for Deshaun Watson and his civil lawsuits. One guy's running up the numbers and running up the check. The other guy's running up the lawsuits. It's crazy. They're going in opposite directions, but we'll talk about both of those. We've been running from that Deshaun Watson topic for a little while. I'm done running. We're going to talk about it tonight. And, the Aaron Donald contract is well-deserved, but it's funny as well. And so we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the show. We'll talk about Game 2 of the NBA Finals. We've been keeping track of that here on the Louie T Network podcast. We'll talk about the Warriors bouncing back in a major way in Game 2 and really setting the stage for this series to do what I thought it was going to do, which is, be a long series, 6 or 7 games, minimum 6. We'll see what happens, but the pressure's now back on the Boston Celtics after they did what they needed to do, which was steal home court advantage. But we'll talk more about that series and in particular game number 2 here in a second. But as always, want to thank you guys once again for joining me tonight. Look forward to chopping it up with you. You guys know what it is. Episode 266 of the Louie T Network podcast starts now. Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the 266th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Hope your weekend was outstanding. Mine was lovely. Kind of felt a little short. You know what was crazy about last week was it was a shorter week because we had the extra day of rest with Memorial Day being on Monday. So the work week got kicked off on Tuesday. Now, I say that very loosely. I don't go to a 9-to-5 like most people out there. I work from home. So when I work just as hard as anybody else, right? However, it hits different when you have to leave your house. When you have to get in your car, drive to a different location and, punch the clock. You get told when you're going to have a lunch break, this, that, and the third. It's different. I've been there before. I know it feels different. Still, the week kind of went past a lot quicker because there was no Monday, okay? So, Tuesday felt like Monday, Wednesday felt like Tuesday, and then you looked up, you're like, oh, man, it's Thursday already. And next thing you know, it's Friday. So that's kind of how the weekend went. It continued with that theme. Saturday flew by, and next thing I knew, it was Sunday. And we had a good time yesterday, went over to a friend's, ate dinner, came home, watched the game, and was disappointed with the second half. But nonetheless, and that's what we're going to start tonight, is the Game 2 of the NBA Finals. Celtics went on a ridiculous 20-2 run in the fourth quarter of game number 1 to not only come from behind after they had a deficit of 12 heading into the fourth quarter, but ultimately win the game by 12 points. It was a dominant performance, one of the greatest quarters I've ever seen, and turnarounds in a quarter against a team the caliber of a Golden State Warriors that I've ever seen. That shooting display by Boston in game 1 in the fourth quarter was through the roof. It was out of this stratosphere. However, I talked about this last podcast, or after game 1, I should say, which was Wednesday. So it would have been Friday, right? Thursday, Friday, somewhere in there. That wasn't sustainable. They weren't going to do that again, right? Like, you couldn't expect Al Horford to make 6 threes. You couldn't expect Derek White to make 5 threes, and you couldn't expect, them to have the impact that they had in that game. They were fantastic. Horford with 26, Brown with 25, White with 21, Smart with 18. You just weren't going to get that kind of production again from, and I expect more from Marcus Smart. He was pretty much invisible in game number 2, but I'm not expecting Al Horford to light it up the way that he did in game 1. And Derek White, I thought, was solid. He gave them what they needed, a little spark off the bench like he always does. He just didn't have anybody to ride with him. But that wasn't the reason they lost in game number 2. They hung in, did the Boston Celtics. Another outstanding performance by Steph Curry. But the difference in this game was the carelessness on the part of the Boston Celtics with the basketball. We talked about the way they were able to knock down the 3-point shot. They actually knocked down the three again in this particular game, especially going into halftime. They were 10 of 19 from the 3-point line. They were shooting over 50% from behind the arc. And the only reason that they weren't being blown out of the game in the first half was specifically the 3-point line, because they had already turned it over 7 times in the first quarter, an additional 4 times in the second quarter. They had 11 turnovers at the half, yet they only trailed by 2. Why? Because they made 10 3-point shots. So that's what was keeping them afloat in the game. If not for the 3-pointer, they would have been down double figures at halftime, because the Warriors were taking advantage of those turnovers. These weren't dead ball turnovers where the ball's being thrown out of bounds and now they have to inbounds the ball and you get to set up your defense. These were live ball turnovers, and the Warriors are running the other way. They're getting layups. They're running out to the 3-point line in transition. They're knocking down threes, and they really made Boston pay for their carelessness. One thing about playoff basketball, and I talk about this all the time, and it really frustrated me as a fan of a team that's a young basketball team. Young players, a lot of times, and that's the difference between veteran teams that have been there, done that a lot of times, and young teams, is that they don't value the basketball. They don't value a possession. In the regular season, you can turn it over 20 times and still win a game because you're playing against a lesser opponent. You're playing against the Detroit Pistons. You're playing against the Orlando Magic. You can turn it over 20 times, still overcome that, and still win the game comfortably because you're just flat out better than them. You get to the playoffs, and just about everyone's good. You get to the NBA Finals especially, and now you're playing the best of the best, creme de la creme. You cannot afford to be careless with the basketball. We talk about possessions mattering in the postseason and every single one of them counting. My biggest pet peeve in the postseason as a fan watching the game is my team not getting up a shot on a possession. Look, it doesn't have to be a great shot. You hate when you don't get quality shots. However, I need a shot up on the rim, because guess what? There's an offensive rebound, there's a foul, there's anything that will allow you to reset and get a better shot. But if you don't get a shot up at all, you can't make a shot that you don't take. So if you turn it over, or you get called for traveling, or you step out of bounds, or it's a 24-second shot clock violation, you just wasted a possession. You just took away an opportunity for you to put the ball in the basket, or at least give yourself another opportunity to potentially put the ball in the basket. When you don't get shot attempts up in a basketball game in the postseason, it usually comes back to haunt you. And that's exactly what happened to Boston. They were way too casual with the basketball in this game. The turnovers were way too frequent. And Golden State, the veteran team, the championship caliber team that they are, made them pay for those mistakes. Jason Tatum shot the basketball a lot better, but it didn't matter because he didn't have, and that's kind of the thing that I was worried about. And we'll see what happens as the scene shifts back to Boston. Is if Tatum's got it going, that usually means less opportunities for the other guys. That's less opportunities for Al Horford. It's less opportunities for Derek White. It's less opportunities for Grant Williams, other guys to shoot the basketball. If Tatum's got it going, he's going to take 25, 26 shots. I think he knocked down 5 or 6 threes, so he was shooting it much better from behind the arc. But I think he's continuing to struggle in the 2-point range. I think he's doing too much. He's looking to draw fouls, a la James Harden with the little stretching of the basketball. I hate when he does that. I still am really frustrated that he doesn't just get to a spot. I talked about this last episode, or whenever we talked about the game 1 performance, and I said he's akin to KD, like that length, that size, the ability to rise up from any point on the court. He did it at the 3-point line in this game. Step back threes, you were knocking those down. Get to a spot, get to the elbow, get to 18 feet, rise up. And I think he's just doing too much. You know, and they're not taking advantage of mismatches. Steph Curry is one-on-one with Al Horford. He's 4 feet from the basket, and he's trying to pass the ball to a guy that's 2 feet from the basket. And I'm like, what are you doing, man? Shoot the ball over Steph Curry. You got Derek White 2 feet from the basket, an easy floater. He decides he wants to drop it off to a guy that's 1 foot from the basket, and it's a turnover. And that's the kind of stuff that was happening. Like, these guys are passing up great shots, trying to get even better shots. And I'm like, no, that's a great shot opportunity that you have. Take it. It's one thing to pass up a good shot for a better shot. You had a great shot right at the front of the rim, and you're passing it to a guy that's not going to catch it, first of all, because you got to put extra sauce on it. And you're standing as close as I am to the camera right now. Like, it's literally from here to there. It's like, why are you passing the ball? Shoot it. So it was frustrating to watch. Meanwhile, Steph had it going, and he had some help. Jordan Poole showed up in this game. He was outstanding. He made 5 3-point shots. And when he's got it going coming off the bench, it's usually problematic for the opposition. Kevon Looney continues to play really well. I thought he played well in game 1, played well again in game 2. As a matter of fact, I think he was perfect from the field, 6 of 6 from the field in the basketball game. Still feel like Klay Thompson is struggling, but they didn't really need his offense as much in this game. He finally hit a 3, and you could see his reaction. He turned to the crowd like, finally, yes! You know, so if he can get it going, he could really turn the series around. But the others stepped up for Golden State. You know, other guys stepped up. And you knew there were going to be adjustments. We saw Gary Payton the second, finally get into the game. I thought he had an impact, especially with no Andre Iguodala, who was back out of the lineup again. Gary Payton came in there, gave him a little bit of energy, defended well. They also put in the tall white big. I can't remember his name, but he can shoot from the outside. He actually gave them a spark. And you know what was crazy? When they were getting blown out in the fourth quarter of game 1, and he got in there and he made a 3, I said, I bet you Steve Kerr gives him a little bit more minutes. And he sure did. And it actually benefited them. I thought he played well. And it's going to be interesting now. Now, to me, all the pressure is on the Boston Celtics now. You know, the scene shifts back to Boston, and it's amazing how these things, the ebbs and flows of a series like this, how it changes so dramatically, so quickly. After game 1, you had people talking about a sweep and a gentleman's sweep, and you had people talking about the Warriors are overmatched and this, that, and the third. And I said, look, that was pretty impressive what the Celtics were able to do in the fourth quarter, but don't forget that they were down 12 heading into that fourth quarter. I said, look, as impressive as game number 1's fourth quarter was by Boston, and it was a good game from them, but it was more so the fourth quarter, they were just ridiculous, and it was an avalanche of threes and just made baskets and really, you know, clamping down defensively as well by Boston. As good as that of a performance as that was, especially in the fourth, I said, I don't see them winning game 2. I talked to my dad. I was like, boss, what do you see happening? And he just wants Boston to win so bad. He was talking reckless, like, yeah, they're going to steal this one too. They're going to be greedy. And I'm like, nah, man, they're not winning this game, dude. If they win this game, the series is over. And Golden State's not going out like that. And so what I told you guys last show was I wanted to see how hungry Boston was. If they were able to find a way to keep this thing close into the fourth quarter and lose the game by 5, or even, you know, of course, win it would be the goal. But if they lost by 5 and Golden State had to execute down the stretch to pull it out, okay, these boys are for real. And not to say that they're not, but if they get their asses handed to them and this thing isn't close, then I'm not sure. Because honestly, Golden State dominated, you know, 2 quarters of game 1. And they got dominated in 2 quarters of game 1. And the 2 quarters that they got dominated in cost them the game, right? In this particular game, they dominated, you know, 3 out of the 4 quarters. I thought the only quarter that the Celtics really had, you know, real traction in was the second quarter. Other than that, I thought they were dominated for much of the game. And I feel like 6 out of the 8 quarters or 5 out of the 8 quarters of the games that have been played to this point have been dominated by the Warriors. So I'm not feeling 100% confident in Boston's ability to get it done. I'm still picking Boston to win this series. However, now the pressure's on them. They can't afford to go and back home in game 3, their first game back home, and give home court advantage right back to Golden State. They have to protect the Garden. So they have to win game 3. You know, if you lose game 4, so be it. It's tied 2-2. It's a pivotal game 5 back in San Francisco, and you try your luck there. The Celtics have been battle tested. They've won big road games in the postseason already in just about every single series. So they're battle tested and they know what it takes to go on the road and win a pivotal game 5 or a must-win game 7. We've seen them do that on the road as well. So they're not afraid to find a way to go and get it done on the road if need be, but they have to win game 3. You do not want to put yourself in a position where your back is against the wall, 3-1, going back to Golden State, having to win game 5 just to get it back to game 6 with a chance. They've done it before. Okay, they've been back against the wall 3-2, going to Milwaukee and having to win to get it back to game 7 at home in Boston. But this isn't Milwaukee, okay? Especially without Chris Middleton. This isn't that group. This is Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, Jordan Poole and company. These guys smell another chip. And so if you're Boston, you have to win game 3. So they've got to come out more intensity. They've got to, I think, be less I think they have to be more aggressive. Look for your shot. You know, if the extra pass is there, yeah, it's nothing like great team basketball. That fourth quarter in game 1 was a great example of great team basketball. The extra pass, you know, and you know, the extra rotation defensively, helping the helper defensively. We saw all of that in the fourth quarter of game 1. We didn't see enough of those things in game number 2. And I feel like if you've got a shot, you're 4 feet from the basket with no one in front of you, lay it up. Shoot the floater. Don't look to pass it to a guy that's 2 feet from the basket. Take the shot. I thought they were overpassing in game number 2. Too many turnovers, too reckless with the basketball, too many stupid fouls, too. I thought in the second quarter, I thought they actually outplayed Golden State in the second quarter. But guess what? They were fouling like crazy. And so Golden State was going to the free throw line. And that's how they were able to keep that lead at halftime, because they fouled way too much in the second quarter. So when they were able to stymie Golden State in game 1, they were able to do it by defending without fouling. Don't put them on the free throw line and allow them to get points while not having to execute offensively. So a lot of adjustments that can be made if you're Boston. You're fine. Nothing is hurt. Now you just got to go home. The crowd's going to be raucous. They're going to be into it. You got to give them a reason to cheer. And I think you need to jump on Golden State early in that ball game and make them feel the pressure of being on the road in a hostile environment. We'll see what happens, but I'm looking forward to game number 3 on Wednesday. So with that said, let's jump into our first segment of the show. You know what it is. You already know what it is. Of course, it's the gem dropping session. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind, let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, LouieTeeNetwork. Let me open you up. Get you thinking a little bit. So, on the thumbnail for the video, if you're watching this, if you're just listening to this, I'll explain. There is a picture of 2 different guys, one of Aaron Donald and one of Deshaun Watson. Aaron Donald just got to the bag. We'll talk about that first, and then we'll talk about Deshaun Watson and the numbers climbing yet again. And so both of these guys are running the numbers up, okay? Aaron Donald's running the checkup, and Deshaun Watson's running the lawsuits up. We'll talk about Aaron Donald first. Never, ever trust a man with 2 first names. And this is why I tell you don't trust a man with 2 first names. Aaron Donald, one of the greatest defensive players. I've said this already, and people have disagreed with me, and that's fine. We can agree to disagree. I get it. Lawrence Taylor, it's 1A, 1B for me with Lawrence Taylor and Aaron Donald. But these eyes have never seen a guy, and I didn't watch Lawrence Taylor in his prime. That's the difference between me and the people that want to say it's Lawrence Taylor. You watch Lawrence Taylor terrorize NFL offenses and force teams to have to change the way that they played offense because of his dominance and having to account for him. I didn't get to see that. By the time I was locked into what was going on, he was at the back end of his career, he wasn't the same guy. So I can only go off of what I've watched in going back and watching old games and seeing him dominate and watching clips and cut-ups. So I know the dominance of LT. My dad told me a million times how dominant this guy was. And I've watched it myself, but I didn't live through it. I've watched almost every game Aaron Donald's ever played in his NFL career. I've lived through his dominance. I've seen it on a weekly basis. So I can attest to just how great this guy has been throughout his career. To that point, they won the Super Bowl, and Aaron Donald said, I'm thinking about retiring. And I said, no, you're not. Stop lying, okay? And we all knew what he was after. I didn't have to tell you guys this. You guys know. You're smart. You're smart enough to see what was going on and read between the lines. But I told you guys anyway. When we first heard about not only him, but his head coach, I told you what they both were up to. Sean McVay also kind of said, hey, thinking about, potentially hanging up and jumping in the broadcast booth. He allowed that to get out to the masses. Now, he could have dispelled that quickly and said, no. He let that ride for a little while before finally coming out and saying, no. I'm still, dedicated to this team and this organization and winning another Super Bowl. But what he's essentially doing, and I told you guys this, is he's about to Pete Carroll at USC the hell out of the Rams. He's going to milk that situation for all it's worth, while they still got these veterans like Jalen Ramsey and Aaron Donald playing at a ridiculously, and Allen Robinson and all these guys, Cooper Kupp playing at a ridiculously high level. Once those guys get old and they're not playing their best football anymore, he's going to bolt, is Sean McVay. The first opportunity he gets to jump into a booth, he's gone. And he's going to leave them high and dry, and they're going to suck for the next 15 years. I'm exaggerating, but they're going to suck for at least 5 to 7 years before they dig themselves out of the abyss. However, he's going to milk this situation for all it's worth with Matthew Stafford and, Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey and Allen Robinson and Cooper Kupp and all these veteran players that are among the best at their respective positions. He's going to milk that for all it's worth until he can't milk it anymore. That said, Aaron Donald did the exact same thing. His plan was never to retire. This is a guy that is in the prime of his career. He's going into year number 9 of his career. He's coming off of his 5th consecutive season of over 11 sacks in 2021. He had 12 and a half. So he's not going anywhere, okay? He never was. So the threat of, hey, I'm going to retire, that was all a ploy. And I told you from the minute, I'm talking Jump Street, the minute this man said he was thinking about retiring, same shit Von Miller did once upon a time when he was looking to get broken off by the Denver Broncos. You threaten to do something that no one believes you're going to do, but you just throw it out there because you want to go ahead and light the fire under, the team that you're currently playing for to get the deal done. And a guy like Aaron Donald is so indispensable. Like, they can't survive without his production, what he means to them, not just on the defensive side of football, but for the offense as well. I mean, how many times during the course of a season does Aaron Donald just dominate a game to the point where he's forcing a turnover and an errant throw, and it's setting up great field position for his offense, whether it's a sack on 3rd down that produces a punt deep in a team's own territory and they're fielding a punt on the plus side of the 50, or he's sacking the quarterback, forcing a fumble, they recover, and all of a sudden your offense is in business at the plus 22-yard line, or he's hitting the quarterback as he's throwing the football, it gets picked off, it goes the other way for a touchdown, or it's, again, plus territory, you're starting your position. Like, that's the kind of impact Aaron Donald has on a football game, right? So he's not only destructive on the defensive side of football, and a guy that teams have to account for, have to change their offensive game plan to account for, but he's also a guy that impacts your offense because he's helping you generate points by giving you great starting field position. So he's so influential to everything the Rams do as a football team and as an organization. There's no life without Aaron Donald right now. So him threatening to retire was going to get the deal done, and he knew that, and he never had any intentions of retiring. It was just to light a fire under that organization to get him what he felt like he deserved to be the highest paid non-quarterback in the league, and that's exactly what he did. So Aaron Donald had 3 years remaining on his contract, and those 3 years were going to pay him $55 million in aggregate, okay? So this is rare, what just happened. Generally speaking, when a guy gets new money, it's also a new contract with new years added to the contract. So if you had 3 years left on your contract, now it's a 5-year deal. They're going to push some of that money towards the back, give you more guaranteed money. And so you're getting more money in your pocket. Your per annual average, or your annual average salary is going to be, heightened, and you're going to be up among the top of the league's, highest paid players at your respective position. And so all of that stuff is enhanced, but it's usually, comes with extra years tacked on the back end of the deal so they can spread the money out. Well, the Rams did not do that with this deal. He had 3 years left on his deal. He still has 3 years left on his deal. However, they just gave him a pay increase of essentially $40 million. So he went from, over the next 3 years, being guaranteed $55 million to now being guaranteed $95 million. And over the next 2 years, it's $65 million. He's going to be guaranteed. They don't have to pay him the $30 million in 2024. He could retire. They could get out of it. It's a out for both parties involved. But if he's still playing at the level that he's playing at right now, the Rams are going to say, we'll pay you $30 million. We got no problems doing that. And if he feels like, 30 is good for me for one more year, he'll take the $30 million. And so right now he's staring at 65 over 2, which makes him the highest paid non-quarterback in the league. That's $32.5 million per year over the next 2 years, which no other defensive player is making. But then you could tack on an additional 30 if he gets to 2024, and that would make it $95 million in aggregate over the next 3 years. So he's absolutely killing it, is Aaron Donald. Well-deserved. You won't get any complaints out of me. He may have finessed the Rams, which, of course, I don't call it finessing when you got to pay a dude. This is the price you pay, or as I like to say, this is the price of admission. Like, Aaron Donald is the best in the game on the defensive side of the football, not just interior defensive tackles, not just defensive linemen. He's the best defensive player in all of football. And if we're talking non-quarterbacks, he's the best player in the league. So he should be paid as such. So I got no problems with Aaron Donald running the checkup, forcing the Rams to give him the bag. And I read a tweet from J.I. Halsell, who was at one point a capologist for Washington. He's also been an agent, still is an agent. And so he's great with the numbers. He understands contracts and how things work. And he's usually pretty good at projecting what a guy is going to make on the open market, or what kind of numbers it's going to take to get a deal done with a specific player. That said, he had a tweet that I thought was spot on when it came to this Rams situation, and not necessarily just Aaron Donald in particular, but just the Rams in general. He said some teams are worried about winning the negotiation, and then other teams are just worried about winning games. And he said the Rams are just trying to win games. He said some teams are trying to win the negotiation and other teams are just trying to win games. And the Rams are trying to win games. And they've been all about that for the last 5 years or so. Pretty much since Sean McVay showed up on the scene, they've been about winning football games. And they have pretty much stopped at no cost. And literally, I mean, no cost, veteran-wise, to get that done. They've given up all the first and second, and hell, in certain instances, third-round draft capital one team can give up. Haven't really given two shits about draft capital in the first 2 days of the draft. And really just aired on the side of, hey, we're going to get as many veteran studs as we can afford, and we'll backload our roster to clean up the loose ends with fourth and fifth and, the occasional third round guy Every now and again, they'll have a second round pick like they did with Cam Akers. But for the most part, their draft usually doesn't start until the third round. Some years it doesn't start to fourth round. And we're going to backload our roster with fourth and fifth and sixth and seventh round picks. And we're going to make sure we hit on these dudes. Can't afford to miss because we don't have a first or a second. And in some cases, we don't have a third. So we got to hit on the third round pick or the fourth round pick or the fifth round guy. And they generally do hit on those later round draft picks. Got to give them credit where credit is due. They get the guys that fill the Sebastian Joseph Days of the world, and they find the Fullers at the safety position. They find the hidden gems, guys that have been cast off like Darius Williams, and they make those guys work. And in order to be successful, you've got to do that, and that's what they've did, you know. So the Ernest Jones of the world, you know, the Micah Kaisers, they find these guys in the later rounds, and they usually get the most out of them. So the Rams continue to do it. They did it again. Everyone wants to know where they're getting all this money from. It's a great question, but when you don't spend a lot of your money on high-level draft picks, you're not spending that money on, you know, first and second round picks, you can reallocate that money elsewhere. And for the Rams, they're paying like 8 dudes big time money. And then the rest of those dudes are on third, fourth, fifth, and sixth and seventh round and undrafted contracts. So they're not really spending a whole hell of a lot of money on those guys. So they're able to spend on Matthew Stafford, Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey, Cooper Kupp, and Allen Robinson. And they're able to still survive. While in Gumby as well. Leonard Floyd, they're able to spend on about 7, you know, to 8 guys because, again, everybody else is on, you know, very, very minuscule contracts that are affordable that allow them to pay these guys. And of course, you can spread the money out. You can make the numbers dance, but they do it as well as anyone in the league. So shout out to Aaron Donald. He signed with Kanye West's agency. Donda, I think it's called Donda Sports, if I'm not mistaken. It's Donda something. And I think he's one of the first real clients to sign with Kanye West. And that's a hell of a splash right out of the gate. We'll see if they're able to get more clients and if they're able to hit it big. I mean, it wasn't hard to get this one done, right? It's Aaron freaking Donald, right? I'll be more impressed when they take a guy that's a, you know, solid player, but not great, and they get him really good money. Then I'll be impressed. This one was easy. Anybody could have done this. Hard to mess this one up. So let's go ahead and transition to the other topic that I wanted to get into on this gym dropping session, and that is Deshaun Watson. So just to recap in the timeline, you know, he wants out of Houston. He's frustrated with the organization and the direction of the organization. They told him he was going to be a part of the, you know, head coach hiring process. He ended up not being a part of that process. They didn't, you know, take into consideration his input. They didn't let him sit in on the meetings. They hired a general manager without really consulting him. And he felt slighted, okay? And that was their fault. They should never have told him. If they had no interest in him being a part of that process, they should have never told him he was going to be a part of that process. They did. He felt like he was lied to, which he was. And so he decided, you know what? There's a lot going on here that I don't really co-sign. And so I went out. And it seemed like a really sticky situation. He had just signed an extension the year before. So it didn't really sit well with a lot of people around the league. But man decided he wasn't going to play another snap for them. So the thought was he was going to get traded that offseason. The Texans dug in, said, we're not trading you. And then they realized, oh, this guy's not playing. And then they got wind of the fact that he was in deep with the law. And so all of a sudden they're like, yeah, you know what? Maybe we need to go in a different direction. By the time they realized that, however, everyone had got wind of the fact that this guy was a serial happy ending massage enthusiast. And by that time, the civil cases had started to amount and arise, right? The amount started to rise, and amass is what I was looking for. The word I was looking for was amass. They were starting to amass. And it went from 5 to 10 to 12 to 14 to 16 to 17 to 19 to 20. It got all the way to 22 civil cases. And we're saying, well, that's a little sketchy. No one's filed a criminal case against him. And then we got like 5 of those filed against him. Those were all dismissed. Okay. That's when he felt adjudicated, and we heard from him for the first time since all of this kind of started. He talked about being innocent and, feeling like he was vindicated. So then the Browns swoop in. They sign him to one of the richest NFL contracts in terms of fully guaranteed money, essentially 5 years, $230 million. They even put in a little bit of a clause that protects him in the event of him being suspended, because he's not going to be suspended past this year. They made his base salary like peanuts in the first year of his contract, so that if he does get suspended, his game checks are going to be so minuscule that it's like a slap on the wrist. So they set him up to pretty much get every single penny of the money that he signed on the dotted line to get. Like literally his contract for the first year from a base standpoint is like $1.4 million, which is nothing when you're talking about a contract that's $230 million. So even if he gets suspended for, say, 6 games, those game checks are going to be minuscule and peanuts in comparison to what he's ultimately going to get through the life of that deal. That said, you kind of thought, okay, maybe the coast is starting to clear up. Okay, we haven't had any new cases filed or charges filed, or anyone looking to sue him in civil court. No one else stepping forward. The biggest news that we had with this situation was that he finally was going to meet with the league, and they were going to kind of do their own trial of Deshaun Watson. Talk to him, see what he has to say for himself, talk about some situations. They've done their own homework and their own investigation, so they're going to question him with things that they deem to be pertinent. And they did. And what we found from some of that was that he knew that some of these women were uncomfortable. Maybe it was a little after the fact, but he even admitted to one lady crying. And he asked her, like, what's wrong? And she told him, and he's like, well, I didn't mean to make you feel that way. Interesting. So whatever the case may be, he's clearly, and his lawyer has been vehemently denying any wrongdoing, pretty much saying, look, it's not against the law. It's not illegal to get a happy ending. Okay. Which he's not wrong. It's not illegal, but it is when the other person doesn't give consent. But it's hard for those to take place if the other person isn't a willing participant. That said, at the end of the day, clearly these women, a few of these, I don't know about all of them. Clearly a few of these women were not comfortable with the dynamic that he presented them with. And maybe they felt obligated to do it. Maybe he pressured them into doing it. Maybe there was more to the story than we, have heard, but clearly he's done some things, whether right or wrong. He's going to get suspended is what I'm essentially trying to tell you guys. Like, it didn't sound good when he was talking to the league. Again, the league, one thing they've already shown us in the past, they don't give a shit about what happens in, the judicial system. They don't care if you have criminal charges filed against you. They don't care if you have civil cases against you and those get thrown out. They don't care about any of that stuff. They're their own judge, jury, and executioner. They've shown us that time and time again. Deflategate comes to mind with that situation. Nothing was done wrong there. There are countless, different theories to explain what happened to the football. They had no proof, yet they still suspended Tom Brady because they can do that. And so they're gonna they have to suspend Deshaun Watson. Like, they can't allow what has transpired and for them to just look the other way. You know, the NFL has been trying to repair its image. They've had some, you know, black eyes and some stains on their brand with some of the behavior of players off the field. It started with Ray Rice, and then it was Kareem Hunt, and then it was Reuben Foster. And so they've had some guys that didn't necessarily do the league any favors. And then the league, you know, the whole Me Too movement started, and the league was like, look, we got to make sure we get out in front of all of this stuff and we keep ourselves clean. And so they've been really harsh, as they should be, on anyone that is, you know, either suspected, and really it started to police itself. At once upon a time, the league had to step in. Teams weren't going to automatically cut a guy. But as we saw with Jeff Gladney, may he rest in paradise, he had a situation. I don't know his situation, Adam from Eve. I can't tell you if, you know, it was one of those situations where he got into it with someone and they said, I'm going to get your ass back and I'm going to show you better than I can tell you. Because all you got to do is scream, you know, this, that, and the third. And, you know, you're going to be believed before the other person is believed. But I don't know. He could have been, you know, guilty of, you know, domestic violence to whatever degree, I can't say. But we don't know. I don't know his situation. I just know the Vikings didn't wait around to find out was he guilty or not. They got rid of his ass. You know, Darius Geis, this guy's over here, seems like he might be a serial rapist and, you know, just a all-around bad dude. And Washington moved on from him with the quickness. And so you're seeing more teams take that approach. Like, we're not going to wait around and see what happens. If we get wind of the fact that you may be involved, you got to figure that shit out on your own, but we can't stick around and support you while you figure it out. So I look at this as a situation where the NFL is going to have to put their foot down and say, hey, man, look, whether you actually did something wrong or not, we're not here to determine that. We just know that it's not a good look for us. So we got to suspend you, dude. You know, you got to miss the first 4 to 6 weeks of the season. And then after that, your debt has been paid. You can go on about your life. They're going to be protests at games. People are going to want to talk about it from time to time, but it'll all go away eventually. But we got to suspend you. There's no way he's going to come out of this thing clean, smiling from ear to ear, and be the week 1 starter for the Cleveland Browns. I just can't see a scenario in which that takes place. So I expect him. And now that the numbers are continuing to climb, we go from we got stuck on 22 for a very long time. We were on 22 here probably for the last 4 to 5 months. And then we got a 23rd like a week ago. And now we have a 24th added to the civil suits. So this is crazy. You know, the whole situation is crazy, but he'll play for the Browns this year. I can assure you that, barring some kind of injury or, you know, setback from a health standpoint, he'll play for the Cleveland Browns. I just don't anticipate it being in the first month of the season. He might get 4 games. He may appeal. They may bust it down to 3, but I see them giving him either a nice, clean 4-game suspension or a 6-game suspension, and then he comes back, and then it's going to be pretty much like it never happened. But he's going to get suspended. I can't see a situation where he doesn't get suspended. But anyway, I digress. 2 dudes running up the numbers just in totally different directions. Donald running up the check, getting the bag. $40 million pay increase for Aaron Donald. $65 million guaranteed to him over the next 2 seasons. And if the Rams decide that they would like him for a third, that'll cost them $30 additional million for a grand whopping total of $95 million for the best defensive player in football. Again, that's the going rate for a guy, the caliber and the skill of Aaron Donald. You get no complaints out of me. So, and then you got Deshaun Watson running up the lawsuits and went from 22 to now 23. Now he's on 24. And again, it's just not a good look for him. It really isn't. And it's crazy because his image was almost squeaky clean going into this situation. Now his image is tarnished forever. He can never get his image back to where it was prior to this ordeal. But it really doesn't matter. The man got $230 million pretty much guaranteed. So he's going to be fine. He may not have a ton of sponsorships off the field. They may all be dead at this point, never coming back. But trust me, he'll be just fine with the deal he signed with the Cleveland Browns. So let's get to social media maneuvers. Y'all know what it is. I'm a midnight marauder. Look forward to chopping it up with y'all. Y'all know how this works. For those of you who do not, I'll quickly explain. Use the hashtag LouieTLive to have your comment read on the air if it is pertinent, and we will discuss whatever you decide you want to discuss. Again, has to be pertinent. Can't be something crazy, or I'll just skip over it. But just about anything under the sun is within reason, is on the table and in bounds. So if you want to jump to the front of the line, you got something you really got to get off your chest, you're itching to have it read, the best way to do that is to super chat. Because again, if you don't get your hashtag in relatively early, then we may not get to it at all. So we'll get to as many of them as possible. But if you want to have your comment read, super chats are the way to ensure that that happens. So let's get to the first super chat, the only super chat that we have right now. And it's from Michael White. Thank you for the super chat, Michael White. Greatly appreciate you, my guy, Michael White. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, what up, Lou? What's up, Michael? Says, you see a superstar in the NBA draft. I do. I think this is a 3-player draft, and that's common with the NBA draft. Is that generally it's a 2 or it's a 3. Sometimes you get lucky. It's like a 4 or 5-player draft, but that's rare. It's usually 2 or 3 players that you can count on and say, hey, these dudes are going to be really good. Like, I wasn't a massive fan of last year. I don't believe in the class last year. They had some solid players, Cade Cunningham and Evan Mobley, and these guys are going to be really good pros. The rookie of the year was in Toronto from Florida State. I don't know, Barnes, right? Like, there's some good players that were in last year's draft. I'm a Grizzlies fan. I think Zaire Williams is going to be outstanding if he's able to put it all together. There were some really good players. I like the dude Josh Christopher for the Rockets. I saw a little bit of him. He looks really explosive and dynamic. I mean, there were some quality players. The foreign kid that the Thunder took before he got injured, he was playing really good basketball. Like, I see a lot. I think Jalen Suggs is going to be just fine with the Orlando Magic, especially now that they have the number 1 overall pick. I think they're going to take Chet Holmgren. I'm more of a Apollo Banchero guy myself, but I'm a Dookie, so I'm biased. But Chet Holmgren is what the league is looking for. His skill set is so unique. It fits what the NBA is always looking for. Bigs that can stretch you to the perimeter, still rim protect and rebound, but can put the ball on the floor, shoot from behind the arc, and stretch a defense. And that's what Chet Holmgren is. He's a unicorn of sorts. That's what the league is looking for. A big that can do it all. He can do it all. So, and he's ridiculously tall. He'll get stronger. He'll put weight on. He looks like a toothpick right now. He'll get stronger. He'll get bigger. Look at Giannis. Giannis first came in the league. He looked like skin and bones and a toothpick. Look at Giannis now. He'll put on weight. I'm not saying he'll get that big, thick, and muscular like Giannis, but he'll put on weight. He won't be as skinny for, the next 3 years from now. He'll be a much bigger, player if he's any good. And but Paulo Banchero is a guy that I love out of Duke. I think he's got a tremendous skill set that really fits. Again, another guy, 6'10", that can take it outside, can dribble the basketball. He's not as explosive as you would like him to be. And sometimes I had to remind myself that he's 6'10". I mean, what do you want a 6'10" dude to do? Like, he's not supposed to be blowing by dudes like he's a point guard. But, sometimes I felt like, he's not as quick as I would like him to be, but he's 6'10", dude. He's not supposed to be fast or quick. But he can put the ball on the ground. He can get to any spot on the court, get his shot off. Nice little turnaround jumper, a little fadeaway. I think he could do a better job of rebounding the basketball. But all things considered, Paolo Banchero for me has a chance to be really special, especially on the offensive side. I think he could improve as a defender. And then you have the kid from Auburn, another big, so this is a draft full of bigs. None of these guys are guards. At the end of the day, I could see any of them being superstars. But again, I'm a Paolo Banchero guy. Chet Holmgren he's got a unique set of skills. You can't teach what he has. So I didn't love last year's draft, but I think this upcoming draft is going to be much better. And there's some other guys that I'm not talking about that have a chance to be really good if they land on the right team as well. So thank you for the super chat, Michael White. Let's see if we have any hashtags. HHC Lunar writes, who do you think, how good do you think Trey Lance will be in 2022? I'm a huge supporter and proponent of Kyle Shanahan's offensive prowess. To me, he's one of the top offensive minds in all of football. Loved him. This is prior to him coming to Washington. He's been fantastic everywhere he's been. There hasn't been a place or stop he's been where the offense wasn't enhanced because of his presence, whether you're talking Atlanta making it to the Super Bowl, you're talking Cleveland, you're talking Houston with Matt Schaub and all those 4,000-yard seasons as a passer with Arian Foster and Andre Johnson. That was all Kyle Shanahan. Wherever he goes, tremendous offense follows. So from that standpoint, I think he can take a guy with this skill set, and he's had experience. That's the thing that makes him so dangerous. He has experience with a guy with the skill set of a Trey Lance when he coached Robert Griffin III back in 2012, and was outstanding and led Robert Griffin III to the Rookie of the Year that season with just a handful of plays, essentially. So I know he knows what it takes to maximize a guy with the skill set of a Trey Lance. What I worry about is the lack of high-end weapons, especially if Deebo Samuel's not locked in. Now, he's going to play for the 49ers, or at least it appears that way right now. But if they somehow weren't able to get on the same page and he decided, I'm out, I don't want to play for you guys anymore, and he literally sat out, or there was a situation where they had to trade him, it would put them in quite the quandary because they don't have a ton of offensive skill weapons. They just really have Deebo Samuel and George Kittle. And then it's a running back by committee type of situation. Brandon Ayuk is starting to kick it up a notch, but you're still not sure if the consistency is going to be there or not. So there's not a lot to love in San Francisco, or there's not a lot to love, I should say, in San Francisco from a skill position standpoint. So they haven't done Trey Lance any favors in that department. But that said, Kyle can overcome that with tremendous play calling and execution on the field. So Trey Lance could be exceptional in his first opportunity to start in this league in year 2. And you know what? I'd bet on him being really good. I really would, because of who his offensive coordinator is. So we'll see what happens. HHC Lunar also writes, even if he's not charged, Deshaun Watson is definitely guilty, not going to lie. Look, the man pretty much admitted that he's made women cry and make them feel uncomfortable with his shenanigans. Again, they were somewhat complicit in this, right? He can't make you do anything you don't want to do, but there could have been a little bit more coercion on his end of the deal, where he's making them feel super uncomfortable. But if you don't do this, it's going to be a problem. And I have power and I have connections, and you'll never work again if you don't do. Like, he could have done some of that. I don't know what the situation is. I just know he did it, right, multiple times. And so he's getting suspended. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that, if you ask me. It's just a matter of how many games. Metaphor, thank you for the comment. And want to give a quick shout out to my guy Metaphor for blessing me with a Commanders style alternative logo that I will be using on some merch. I'm right now working on what I'm calling my Blackout line of Washington Commanders merch, and that's going to launch at some point later on this month, and I'm excited about it, and it's going to be dope, and I hope you guys enjoy it. And my guy Metaphor is a huge part of that because of the contribution that he made with that logo. And I didn't ask him to do it. He did it on his own free will, his own time, energy, and resources he spent to bless the kid within a few options as alternate logos. And they were all fantastic, but one in particular resonated with me. And so I'm going to use that one. So shout out to my guy Metaphor for the blessing. And I sent you another message on Twitter. Make sure you check that out. And the sooner you can do that for me, the better. I would really, truly appreciate that. And we're going to hook you up with some free merch, because again, a lot of this wouldn't have taken place at the time that it did in the manner that it did without you. I was going to have to do something. You expedited the process. Unknowingly, you expedited the process. So a big shout out to my guy Metaphor. Once again, thank you for your contribution, man. Truly do appreciate you. He writes, so don't tell me that Aaron Donald can get paid so much in all these other Rams, and we can't structure a deal for Terry unless the Rams are using both LA teams' cap space. They're not. I've explained to you how they've been able to finagle the cap to make it work for them and make it make sense. A lot of the money, some guys' money is big in this year. Like for instance, Cooper Kupp's in the second or third year of his extension, so it's big money for him. They can't get out of that, right? But a guy like Matthew Stafford, who just got the extension, Aaron Donald just got this. It's really not an extension. It's just a pay raise, a pay bump, if you will, an increase. But Stafford got the extendo clip. And what you can do in situations like that is you can take that base. And I told you what the Browns did with Deshaun Watson's year one base salary, right? It's like $1.4 million. You can take the base and make it just this ridiculously low amount of money. As long as it's higher than the veteran minimum, you can make it whatever you want and just give them a bunch of upfront, guarantee money, bonuses, roster bonuses, signing bonus. So they're still being taken care of in year one. It's just in a different form. And so you can play around with those numbers. Eventually that's going to catch up with you, because at some point you can't run from the cap. Can't have the base salary be $1.4 million every year. So eventually that number is going to be extremely high, but you can juggle that around and have this guy's salary be high this year, this guy's salary be high, and then the next year this guy's salary comes down a little bit. Give him some, or you restructure, give him from guarantees, turn some of those, convert some of that base salary into roster bonuses and things of that nature, and bring that cap number down and bring that base salary number down. So the Rams, and I told you, they also don't have to spend, like for instance, the Giants. They're probably paying Daniel Jones in year 4 of his rookie deal. They're probably paying him every bit of, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 million, right? And had they picked up the 5th year option, which they declined, I think that was like $23 million. That's a lot of money, right? That's the going rate for a top 5 pick, which Daniel Jones was. I believe he was 5th. If he wasn't 5th, he was 6th. So if you don't have any first round picks, you're not paying ridiculous amounts of money as they get into the latter stages of that rookie contract. If you don't have any second round picks, or don't have very many of them on your roster, you're not paying a ton of money as they get towards the end of their rookie contract. You're paying guys that are in 3rd and 4th and 5th and 6th and 7th round contracts, and guys that are undrafted rookies. So the impact of their numbers on your cap are minuscule in comparison to other teams who have 1st and 2nd, who have multiple first round. The Jets just drafted 3 dudes in the 1st round. It's 3 dudes, right? Yeah, 3 dudes in the 1st round. And then had another guy that they drafted highly in the 2nd round, if I'm not mistaken. I might be overrating one of those guys. They drafted Sauce. They drafted Sauce. They drafted Wilson And I thought they doubled back and got one more guy in the first round. That might have been the running back from Brees Hall, and he was a second round pick. But either way, or I think they got the edge rusher from Florida State too, Johnson. So if that's the case, you get those 3 dudes in the first round, and then you got a high level second in Brees Hall. That's a lot of money you're forking over if you're the Jets, 3 years from now. If those guys are all good, and you have to pick up the 5th-year option. That's a lot of money that you're tied to. The Rams don't have that problem. They're not hanging on to these dudes. And we saw some of the moves that they made like 2 years ago during the season. They traded Young, who was playing exceptional football for them. They traded him to the Broncos just because they didn't want to pay him the money that he was going to get paid. They're like, yeah, we can't afford you, dude. We got other guys we got to pay. So they traded him in season. Like, that's the kind of stuff that the Rams are on. So their situation and Washington's situation are 2 different situations. Washington is on the hook for $28 million for Carson Wentz for 1 year, essentially. Whereas the Rams aren't on the hook for that much money to one dude on their roster. They're spending that money out amongst these guys who are getting paid big money. So Washington could have, done something to alleviate themselves in their cap situation, but they want to guarantee money to Carson Wentz past this year because they're not sure what they're going to get from him. So Terry McLaurin's going to get his money. Don't you worry. Trust me when I tell you. He's going to get his bread. Let's see. Red Wings 01. Thank you for the comment. And Red Wings 01 writes, he says, so how do you see this affecting Baker's situation? Do the Browns play him the first 6 weeks to market him? Or if Deshaun is gone all year, Baker plays one final year and walks? I don't think they want him anywhere near the team, which is why Baker stayed away from OTAs. I don't think he plans on showing up to training camp. They want to trade him and move him before training camp. It could get ugly because it's a contentious situation. Like there's disdain on the end of Baker right now and contempt for the Browns organization. And I don't think they have really any ill will towards Baker, but at the same time, they want the chemistry in the locker room to remain rock solid, and it's hard for that to take place if Baker's there along with Deshaun Watson. So I think that they are looking to potentially move Baker. If they could get something for Baker right now, they would. And I've already told you that the teams have reached out, but they've also had a stipulation like, hey, we want him, but we don't want to pay him, $19 million. How about you eat some of that? And if you eat $10 million of this, if you eat $13 million of this, $14 million of it, we'll take him off your hands. And the Browns are like, nah, if that's the case, we might as well keep him. We need you to take half of this contract. You meet us halfway, you got a deal. So I think that's another one of the hangups for the Browns is like, look, if we trade this dude and we eat, 3/4 of the contract, that's an L for us. We're trying to not only move this dude who's disgruntled, we're trying to move that money as well and free that cap space up. So, ideally, Deshaun Watson is, and let's see who they have on the roster, because I could have sworn they added an additional quarterback to their roster. And I said, that's the new backup quarterback. Let's check out the Browns roster and see what quarterbacks they have on their squad currently, because I think that's going to be very impactful when we have the discussion about moving Baker Mayfield. So, yeah, I knew they did that. They signed Jacoby Brissett in the offseason. So, to me, that was their sign that they were moving on from Baker. They don't want Baker anywhere near the football field for them. They have no intentions of him playing a snap for them moving forward. And so they're not looking to raise Baker's trade value. his trade market and value is what it is at this point. Teams have drafted quarterbacks. Teams have signed veterans in free agency. Teams have traded for guys in the offseason. That market has come and gone. There's nothing they can really do to elevate his stock. If he plays during the regular season and he played well, yeah, maybe there's a thirsty team out there that thinks, oh man, we got an injury to our quarterback and we got a good team here. Maybe Baker could, do some damage, but highly unlikely you're going to get anything for him in season. Unlike the Jimmy Garoppolo situation when the 49ers were trash at quarterback and they had an opportunity to go get themselves a franchise quarterback in Jimmy Garoppolo for the next season. They said, hey, we'll give you an audition, this year. And he finished up the final 5 games undefeated and they won and he played well and all that good stuff. But they had a chance to get themselves a franchise quarterback. If you trade for Baker Mayfield and you already had a quarterback and he just got injured, that's not a good position to be in, right? So as far as I'm concerned, this doesn't change anything with regards to Baker. If Deshaun Watson is suspended for the first 4, 6, 8 games of the season, whatever the case may be, that's why they got Jacoby Brissett. That's why they have Joshua Dobbs on the roster. They got 2 guys that they probably feel comfortable putting out on the football field if need be. More specifically, Jacoby Brissett. That's going to be the guy that they would look to carry the load, to keep them afloat until Watson was able to return from his suspension. But make no mistake about it, they have no intentions of Baker Mayfield playing another snap for them, not even in the preseason. So I don't think it changes that dynamic at all whatsoever. Let's see. Blue Heart Apparel CEO writes, I say he'll get at least 8 games. 4 really has no real impact, I believe, in the eye of the public. Which rookie on our squad makes the largest impact on our overall record? You might be right about 4. 4 might not be enough to satisfy the masses, but because, there hasn't been anything really done in the judicial system and he was able to pretty much be cleared of any wrongdoing in, federal court to where they said, look, this isn't enough to actually take him to court. I think him not having any criminal charges is going to lessen the amount of punishment the league levies down on him. Like I said, not having criminal charges filed against you doesn't stop the league from pursuing a suspension, but what it does do is it limits the amount of games they're looking to suspend you. So I think if he had gotten convicted or if they were going to trial for 2 or 3 of these criminal, suits that were filed, or criminal charges that were initially filed, or criminal complaints, let's call them that. If 2 or 3 of those criminal complaints had gone to court, I think the NFL would add a whole different tone on how many games he gets. But because all of those were dismissed, and now it's just a matter of emotional distress and money from that standpoint, but nothing actually was, done wrong in the court of in the public's or the court's eyes. I think the league is going to kind of take a step back and say, hey, we haven't gathered anything to support that you did anything egregious. Keep in mind, I get it. It wasn't 24 women, but Robert Kraft might have been even more egregious in what he did than Deshaun Watson did, and the league just pretty much slapped him on the wrist. Now, I get it. It's an owner versus a player, but still, you can't be hypocritical here if you're the NFL. If you're going to slap Robert Kraft on the wrist for essentially doing the same thing, but doing it in a much shadier environment where they were, trafficking females, then you have to show Deshaun Watson some kind of grace and mercy. I'm not saying that he doesn't get suspended, but and it was 24. It wasn't just 1 or 2, as in the case with Robert Kraft. You still have to say, hey, this isn't that much dissimilar. This isn't that much dissimilar to what happened with Kraft, and he barely got, touched. So that's the way I would approach it if I'm Deshaun Watson and his team, but we'll see what the league decides to do. As far as rookies on the Commanders roster is concerned and who will have the biggest impact, I think it's Jahan Dotson. I know that's low-hanging fruit. He's the first-round pick, but they got high hopes for this dude, and they're expecting him to come in and have immediate impact. Huge dividends paid off initially. So I think it's Jahan Dotson that has the biggest impact on the Commanders right out of the gate. JP writes, there was a time where Anthony Davis was right up there with Giannis and Nikola Jokic for the best big man in the league. He's got to stay healthy for my Lakers, but he's still talented, though. And nobody ever denies that the Brow is talented. You nailed it right on the head that he's injury prone. And, when your nickname is street clothes, you've got a problem. So for as talented as he is, nobody cares about your talent. We talk about this in the NFL in particular all the time. The best ability is availability. I don't care how talented you are, if you aren't on the field, or in the case of Anthony Davis, if you're not on the court, who gives a shit how talented you are? If your talents are being spent dressed in street clothes and cheering on your teammates for, half to 2/3 of the season, then your talents are insignificant in the grand scheme of things because you're never on the court playing, impacting games in the way that you should be. So, yeah, he's one of the most talented players in the league. He's a problem when he's healthy and he's locked in. Problem is he's never healthy. So it makes a huge difference. Yes, Rich, Jabari Smith is the kid from Auburn that's going to be a top 3 pick. I don't think he goes 1 or 2. I think he's the 3rd guy. But, we'll see. You never know. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder. Raymond Spencer, thank you for being a member of the MOBB, writes, do you see our Commanders adding a linebacker or waiting to see what Terry's contract dictates first? No, those two things are mutually exclusive. Like, they can go out and sign a linebacker and a defensive tackle and still give Terry his money. Again, they're not looking for, like I was talking to somebody on socials earlier today, and we were talking about Ndamukong Suh because he's available. And with the Buccaneers signing Akeem Hicks to that 1-year, $10 million deal, that means Suh is not going to be back in Tampa Bay. Which means he's available and he's a veteran, and that's what we're looking for. And the guy was like, hey, Suh's available. He's out there. And I'm like, yeah, I thought about that for a brief second. It was fleeting. But I thought about Ndamukong Suh. But I said he not only doesn't fit Washington's timeline. Like I told you, I did the video over the weekend talking about defensive tackle John Kaminsky, who was released by the Falcons and put on waivers, and 8 teams put in a waiver claim for him, including the Commanders. And of course, the Lions had the number 2 overall pick. They put in a waiver claim. They get him. So Washington was interested, though. That was the point of me sending out that tweet and doing that video. And what it says, Kaminsky is probably like 27, 28 years old. Again, another guy in his 20s, still playing prime football of his career, a guy that they probably thought they could mold. And if they could just get him in here, they felt like he could fit what they want to do defensively and schematically. That's what they're looking for. They're not looking for a 34, 35-year-old Ndamukong Suh who was going to want $9, $10 million a year, even if it's a 1-year deal. They're not. I don't think that's what they're looking for. I don't think that's what they're in the market for. So they're not interested in spending money on an aging veteran. If they're going to spend money and good money, it's going to be on a young guy going into the prime of his career. They've shown us that already. So I don't think they are really binded by anything other than, look, we just need to get Terry's deal done. And, once we get to a space where the numbers make sense for all parties involved, or we get to a deadline and you got to act, then you'll get something done. But as far as I'm concerned, I don't think that a defensive tackle or a linebacker is going to impact Terry getting his money at all. Red Wings 01 writes, also, what do you think of our chances of beating the Browns if they are playing Baker or Jacoby Brissett? We ain't beating Deshaun. And against San Francisco, do you prefer we play Lance or Jimmy G? I would prefer Lance because, or excuse me, Jimmy G, because we have a tough time, even though we have athleticism, we have a tough time stopping and defending mobile quarterbacks. So a guy like Trey Lance scares me half to death because they're going to run him in his first year starting. Kyle Shanahan's going to make him a threat as a runner, one that you have to account for, which is what they did with Robert Griffin III, and which is why he was so successful. It also opened up the run game, but it also opened up passing lanes. When a guy has the threat of him using his legs, you have to then be on your P's and Q's, Y's and Z's. And with that happening, the field starts to open up, especially the middle of the football field. And they're going to have Trey Lance probably exploit that, but they're also going to have the ability to say, hey, you see it, tuck it, run, go, take it faster than slow. And he scares the bejesus out of me. Guys like him that are tremendous athletes, even though he's not a burner or a blazer like a Lamar Jackson or a Michael Vick, he's still plenty good as an athlete and capable of hurting you if you do not defend, read option, or something like it, accurately. So I don't like our chances. I have us losing to the Browns because Deshaun Watson's going to be playing in I think that's a week 16, if I'm not mistaken, contest. He'll be playing by then. So, all right. I think we're going to lose that game, but we'll see. You never know. JP writes, is there a player in Major League Baseball you despise? No, I don't care about baseball the way that I used to. So by virtue of that, I don't have enough interest to actually despise a particular player. There are teams that I'm not the biggest fan of, like the Miami Marlins, for instance. They've hit Ronald Acuna. They hit him again this year. They've hit him, I think it's now 7 times in his career. Mind you, the man, I get it. We play, they're in our division. We play them 100 times a season. Yeah. But mind you, the man's been in the majors since 2018. He missed a good chunk of the season last year with a torn knee ligament. And he's already been hit 7 times by the Marlins, if not more. Like, that's frustrating to me. Pisses me off. But like in individual players, nah, I don't have any of those that I can't stand any longer. But back in the day, there were some guys that I just couldn't stand at all. But I digress. Michael White, thank you for the comment, who writes, who is your NFL breakout player this year? Mine is Trevor Lawrence. That's a good one, especially him being paired up with Doug Peterson. I think that's a great situation. And I've talked about that on the podcast already. So that's a good one. Breakout candidate, a guy that is going to have a humongous season. I think, Trey Lance is on that list. Excuse me. I could see a guy like Odafe Owe for the Ravens blowing up and having 13 and a half sacks this upcoming season. He's talented enough to do it. That's a great question. I'd have to sit down and kind of comb through all of the teams in the league and, really analyze who they've got going into that second or third season that they're starting to come. You can see the maturation and the light bulb going off, and now this is going to be a big year for them. I'd have to sit down and analyze it. But Trevor Lawrence is a very good one. I think Trey Lance is in that discussion. I think Odafe Owe is another one to keep an eye on as well. All right. So now let's transition to our final segment of the show. And that, of course, is garbage time. So what I wanted to talk about for garbage time was a couple of dudes retiring. So we talked about Forever Frank hanging it up along with Ryan Fitzpatrick. So we know about those guys, but I saw an additional 2 players hanging it up, and a coach finally called it quits in Romeo Crennel, who's been a long-time head coach / assistant in the NFL. He was just recently with the Houston Texans, if I'm not mistaken, and now he's done. So kudos on a fantastic, I think it was 50 years in the NFL for Romeo Crennel. Amazing run for him. And also, Stephon Tuitt retired. He was a good player, a former Golden Domer. So, I do have a bit of affinity for him because he did go to Notre Dame. But, he was really good, but it felt short-lived. But he decided to hang it up. But the one that was really interesting was Malcolm Jenkins. This is a guy that just seems to be holding on for the longest time in the NFL. Continues to hold on. And now he's deciding to get out while the getting's good. And, he was an ambassador for the league, for social change, things of that nature. So it'd be interesting to see if he gets into, because he's a well-spoken guy. Be interesting to see if he gets into the media at all, and what kind of a role does he play if he decides to get into the media. I could see him being a Rodney Harrison type, but obviously for a different network than NBC. So, that's another guy that I don't think he's a Hall of Famer, but he played a long and really respected, I should say, career. He's a guy that was respected around the league. And I just loved his transformation. Remember, I don't think a lot of you remember that coming into the league, he was a corner. Malcolm Jenkins and Huff and all those dudes coming out, they were safeties that converted to corner and were able to play the cornerback position relatively well in college. But that skill set wasn't going to translate to the NFL. They were going to get cooked. So they moved to safety, and they were impactful players. I don't know if many have done it better than him in making that transformation. Recently, I should say. There are other guys that have made the transition seamlessly, but he did it really well for a very long time, whether it was with the Eagles or with the Saints. He was outstanding for a stretch there. So that's all I have for you, man, on this installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I thank you guys for joining me. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys. And this will be a shorter week. I'm going to be out of the office on Friday. So we will have a podcast on Wednesday. And we may have one Thursday. Don't quote me on that. The likelihood is we won't. So Wednesday will be our last podcast. If you're a member of the MOBB or a fan of Washington, the Washington Commanders, then you will get a video on Thursday. Like I said, my schedule is coinciding with the NBA Finals. So the Finals, Game 3 is Wednesday. So the live stream will be Thursday this week. So looking forward to chopping it up with you guys and discussing a number of various topics. I think I'm going to put out a Commanders video because some Commanders news came out today about how they're going to handle certain situations throughout the course of the season. So I think I got a little bit to say on that. So I think I might put out a quick little video. So keep your eyes peeled for that. I don't know if it'll be today or if it'll be tomorrow, but I'm definitely going to put something out to discuss some of the news that came out today surrounding the Commanders and some of the things that they'll be doing in the near future. So with that said, that's going to do it for me, your man, Louie T. I thank you guys for joining me. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys later on in the week. You know what it is. Get off the bench, get in the game, and kick it with me, your man, Louie T. Until next time, you guys take care. God bless, and good night.